Here we are then, Paul, another Truth Proof live stream, and welcome everybody on tonight's live stream. I can see there's a few people in the chat, Paul.
Absolutely, and like I say, every week it soon comes round, doesn't it? And you know, what a great panel of guests that we've got tonight. I feel quite honoured that they want to come on and share their views, their subject matter with us, and it's absolutely brilliant. I know we're still waiting for two. I think Mark, Ollie, and Nathaniel will join us later. Fingers crossed.
Yep.
But yeah, let's just have a look who's in this chat, and it moves quick, people. So if I don't get you, apologies. So we've got Ralph Winter, Diane Farrell, Patrick Daniel, Stargazer, Janice Parry. Thanks for the card, Stargazer, as well. Appreciated. Disabled Welshman, Martin Abbas, Steph, John Thomas. And that's as far as I can see. Janice Parry have said that. So absolutely brilliant. Thanks for support, guys.
Yeah. Support's always appreciated. Karen Behrman, is in the chat. And did you say Sober Carper in the chat?
Sober Carper, yeah. And that's
Ralph Winter's in the chat. And
well, let's just.
Well, we've got Nathaniel film on there.
That's down to Paul. Yeah. I just added in a bit premature there. I was.
Oh, okay then. Right. Well, okay. Without further ado, without so much chattering from us, like I say, appreciate if you'd like and subscribe to this channel if you aren't already, because we have noticed a big percentage of people who tune in don't subscribe, but it'd be really appreciated if you could. So off we go. We're going to bring in. I'll bring in Barry Fitzgerald, Steve Mera, Philip and Ronnie, Nathaniel, Gillis. And at this moment in time, as producer of the show, I'll just be in the background, Paul, and I'll see you guys a bit later.
Okay. And as you can see, we're just short of Mark Ollie, but hopefully he'll appear in the next 10 minutes or so. But I'm sure we can manage. So we've got Barry Fitzgerald, and I'm not going to go through a great list of accomplishments and achievements here. So, Barry, just tell us a little bit about Barry Fitzgerald, please.
I'm based over in the west coast of Ireland. I have been researching the wild and strange now for over 35 years. Published many books on the subject. Appeared in Ghost Hunters International for my sins, and which went out on the Sci-Fi Channel, traveling the world looking for paranormal phenomena. And that's about me. And I delve now primarily into the mythology and the folklore of my own island here. But that has pushed me into other areas of the fringe research fields.
Thank you. And we'll move on to Steve.
Yeah, Barry's very reserved there. I mean, he does a lot of different things. He's also one of the leading project guys on Project Doorways, one of the principal investigators, which we've been involved in for quite a number of years now, all over the world. But 40 years for myself, kind of got into the subject from I studied the paranormal, Barry was in there as well. Know that Barry is more involved in a lot of the ancient mysteries and legends, and well, they're not all legends, I can tell you that. I've been to Ireland a few times. Some of these you might think are legends, not all of them. And then come to the UFO stuff and the ancient mysteries. It all gets tied into one whole big bucket of stuff as time goes on over the years. But do you know what? I was naive enough to think that, my mentors told me back in 1983 that this phenomenon is all nuts and bolts, traveling from the vast distance of stars, traveling here to save humanity or whatever, And I went with that for quite some time. Blimey, things change, guys. But I like to get involved in quite a number of books and a lot of television shows. Started writing for them initially, and then ended up on the camera in front of it. So I've done quite a lot of that sort of stuff. Run an expo, Awakening Expo, which is the largest in Europe, and that's we have one every year. But next year we're doing 3. And the CEO of Phenomena magazine, which is the largest e-zine of its kind on the subject. Which is monthly and free. So 360 bit really, all this. It's like myself and Barry. It's just anything kind of fits in there, we do it.
Thank you, Steve. And Mark's arrived now, so we may as well, it's in order. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, please, Mark.
Oh, I'm an archaeologist, writer, TV presenter. I've got a number of books out, more recently UFO and mystery related. I suppose primarily I'm archaeology, but I've got an enormous interest in so many different esoteric fields and mystery fields, etc. Over a long period of time. So, as you can see, I'm starting to get older. So, yeah, it's not just for Christmas, I can assure you.
Is that why you're late? Have you just finished your job? You see,
I was running around with the reindeer on a sled. You know what I mean? Chucking out presents, and I just took a break.
No, it's brilliant, Mark. Thank you, and thanks for making it. And
Hey,
Nathaniel, tell us about yourself.
Yes. Well, as you all know, I'm Nathaniel Gillis. I hail from the United States in Dayton, Ohio. And my interest as of late has obviously ufology, but the interconnectivities that has with demonology. Caveat, I don't believe they're demons either, but that has been the side of the mountain that I've used to climb to whatever we're going to be discussing today. But I think also the interconnectivities the phenomenon has with the occult. And but that's been my my interest as of late. And hello, everybody, and I'm glad to be with you guys tonight.
Oh, we're delighted to have you. And obviously, Steve, not Steve, Ronnie and Philip. Tell us about you.
Well, I primarily had a great interest in the UFO Department of Study because of a number of very close encounters, and I wanted to find the truth behind what was operating with this force. I'm the author of a few UFO books, and this led me into psychic exploration, psychic phenomena. And I'm very honored to have appeared on a number of television productions and also documentaries, and also linked with Zohar as well too, The Awakening, which I have to state are amazing. So my interest in ufology, in the consciousness, in alternative dimensions of reality, in not only antediluvian cultures. I mean, wow, this opens up a broad range of different subject matters that people try to put in one box, but it's not. There are multiple connections, I think, to be made. So that's where I am. And I've got a new book coming out in February, if I can promote that just quickly.
Please do.
Terrestrial Trespassers. And so I'm very honored to be here and among many acquired and like-minded minds.
My bio is going to be very brief because I'm the younger sapling here. I'm an artist, a writer. I love science fiction. That goes against you. We know all about that, but mainly science fiction. I'm working on a new one now. I'm continuing with it, a novella. But I have looked into the UFO field, and through some experiences, that's what promoted this interest from years ago. So yes, that's basically my brief bio with you grand gentlemen here.
Thank you very much. And obviously, for those that don't know, we've got the panel for the 2024 awakening, mini awakening, isn't it, Steve? And it's sat in front of us, and the darker side of ufology. But before we jump into this, obviously, if anybody's got questions in the audience, please put them in block capitals for the panel today. But I want to just jump back to Les, because I think Les is going to kick this off with a question for us all.
Yeah, and I'm just sandwiched in the middle of you guys. And the question is, and thanks for everybody, guests and everybody in the chat for joining us tonight. It's going to be a great stream. I can feel it in my water. So there we go.
All right.
Water. Okay. So the question is, does the panel think the phenomena knowingly tricks people? Is it a trickster?
Me personally, if I want to, let me just kick this off. I think it does knowingly trick people. I think it's all knowing, all seeing. And I think, and I'll not labour on this because I just want to hear other people talk. But I think that if you're a ufologist, we're being duped in the same way that if you're looking into cryptids, we're being duped. And there's so many threads running through all the genres of the unexplained that they're there. They're not hidden. Well, they are hidden in plain sight, but they're there. The lower silence, this descent into this strange disjointed reality runs through the cryptid phenomena, the UFO phenomena, the alien abduction phenomena. And the list goes on, and we could go through them, but no need. Anybody else want to kick that one?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I think the problematics of this is that we rely on just our known senses to try and understand what we actually people are experiencing, or we experience in some cases. The biggest problem here, I think, is trying to put it into a box, because and I've said this so many times, and I think you guys will agree with this, is that I think it's hindered the investigation and the research process over the years because people weren't looking at all the areas. They were, the paranormal guys were focused so much in the paranormal field, they wouldn't really mix with the UFO guys. And the UFO guys, I mean, some of them are really intense, and that's kind of split into sections where it's historical incidences. I don't want to hear about historical incidents anymore. I don't want another photograph. I don't want another video. Though that, I'm happy to receive them, and I'm always interested to see them. But I want to try and push forward because we just can't stay static for any longer. And this phenomena, for me, I think it specializes in evading. I think Nathan might be able to touch on this because I know that he's mentioned this before about the protocols of what this phenomenon does and how it's literally inbred in it to evade. Nathan, what do you think?
100%. It evolves in order to evade. And if I may, over the weekend, last week, I was rereading Dr. Carla Turner's book, Masquerade of Angels. And in that book, Ted Rice is discussing like a 20-year relationship with his guides. And then when the mask changes and he starts being abducted by whatever these things are, they went silent. Nothing, like literally nothing. And so, yes, the phenomenon, I believe that it is evolving according to our awareness of it. And the reason it evolves is to evade. And so it's like this symbiotic relationship. Do you see me? Yes. Okay. But I mean, what kind of an intelligence can exist for thousands, if not millions of years? And yet here we are still asking the same old question. So there is a control mechanism in play, but there is evasion. Absolutely. 100%.
Thank you.
Do you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of a film, a very well-known film called The Thing. I mean, it could, change into whatever it wanted to change into, take over a person that no one would know. And I often think about that. And I will tell you that if anything was really around like that here in the way that it operated in the film, I'll get off this planet. But I just think and feel that, it's like that, isn't it? Because it evades detection. And even when you're faced with it, you're not able to distinguish what is fact and what it's trying to create as fiction, because there's always been this kind of toy-like quality with regards to most of the phenomena, which is very unsettling, I think.
I've got a name for it, an atomic magician.
That works.
Well, in my experience, it puts me in mind of the days when, high school and all the rest of it, they tried Ouija boards. Ouija boards are this Victorian device for contacting the other side. And of course, the other side comes through, and whatever it comes through as is, what you're asking for. It's Auntie Mary or Uncle Bob or whatever. But as soon as you challenged it, it used to lose its temper. It would throw things around, it would whiz off the board. And the number of horror films based on the idea that what you were bringing through was actually fake. It was a forgery. And it is this kind of super eternal consciousness that is perfectly capable of reproducing somebody because it can watch them during their lifetime. This thing that's out there is watching us. It can reproduce us. It can copy us. Back to what you guys were saying about the thing. It's that duplication thing. So in the occult, the idea of forgery is quite well established. The idea that, whatever it is you're dealing with is not necessarily who it claims to be or what it claims to be, but that you can't judge what it is based on the information, because it could be watching you from the other side as much as you're watching it from this side, if you kind of see how it works. So the whole concept of that and applying that to other things, like the cryptids and the aliens and, whatever, go the Loch Ness Monster, whatever it is, you can't necessarily automatically take it on face value.
And do you think it's possible that it's the same intelligence or that's interacting on every level? The UFOs, people using the Ouija board, people dabbling spiritual mediums, cryptid researchers.
Ironically, from a church point of view, the other side of that has already been noted. as long ago as the 70s and the 80s, people certainly in the Pentecostal church were saying, oh, all these aliens are demons, you know, they're all demonically inspired, and this, that, and the other. So that's not a new concept. What is new is that not everybody has applied that logic. Not everybody is thinking that way. So I'm totally with Steve, and I think it's time to, you know, kick away the boxes, kick away the barriers, and get out there and start finding out what the similarities are. We're not going to know unless we talk to each other.
So that, and I'll stop after this one. So I've just said, is it the same intelligence? You know, I'm just throwing that out there, or is it the same exotic science that all genres of the phenomena are employing to interact with us?
I think fundamentally, there is a core element which is the same, and this reaches back into our prehistory. This interaction with this phenomena. However, today we need to be very, very careful, because the deception doesn't only lie with the phenomena that's coming through from the void; it also lies within humanity. And there is a key aspect of humanity which is out there to deceive, and we're seeing that very evidently today within the ufological field. And there we need to apply the brakes, because we need to separate our technology and its technology, and those are two fundamentally different things.
It's unusual. Barry's hit the nail on the head, because I was talking to somebody the other day and they were asking me questions like, well, what are the real stretched heads? What are the real crop circles, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And it seems to be a pattern that I've watched over many, many years, that when the real thing appears, everybody then jumps on it and starts producing copies of it. You know, that as a general rule, that seems to be what happens, you know. So there are real stretch heads, and then there are human-made ones, and there are real crop circles, and there are human-made ones. And it seems to be the same in ufology. There are genuine encounters, genuine abductions, genuine aliens, and then there's something else, you know, that's probably us.
I think, Mark, in that particular aspect, yes, we've always had that copycat thing going on, but now we've got an actual, you know, governmental processes which are behind that deception, which is coming with a greater wave of it than we've ever encountered before. And that in itself, if we get carried away in that wave, we will become lost again, because now we are in a great position in which we can observe the phenomena in its truest form. But if we decide to roll with the minions, we can easily get washed away, and we need to be very, very careful. We need to find our grounding and observe. Good science starts with observation, and that's something which we're losing. And even science these days we have to question.
I agree with Steve also, and all of you gentlemen as well, that this does not fare well within the world of ufology, because as we know that the whole subject matter has been decompartmentalized. We all know here that there are parallels to be made, connections to be made with regards to patterns with the phenomena at hand. And of course, you'll have people telling you that they're this or they're that. I mean, we had one person telling us that they knew of one reptilian in their high command. Well, good luck to them. I will say that the truth is what all of us are after in the rawest sense. And normally, I think when it's raw, that is more fascinating than the media's interpretation of what they would try to sell us, and continuously try to sell us on a level that most of the public believe to a degree.
The damage has been done, if I might add, is that it's ufology and things like the paranormal and these other cases, it almost becomes like a religion. And people are dead set on believing the nuts and bolt aspect. And what you said, Steve, was quite right, Barry, as well. It's going to be an absolute struggle to tear people away from the mainframe idea of these things possibly coming from outer space, when it could be something entirely different. This is the problem, and this is what causes division. And I sometimes wonder if this force or the people as well will absolutely lap this up, because it's causing the very boundaries that it wants, as you said yourself, Nathaniel, the idea of it absolutely confounding people again and again, soiling the issue, muddying the pool.
I think for people that have been in this subject long enough, they can start to see through the veil a little bit, and the problems and the lies and the deceit. And, but for newcomers, I mean, it's an absolute minefield for newcomers into this subject, because what the hell are, what they're thinking, what it is, what it constitutes. I mean, back in the day, we were communications with these so-called beings and entities of various types. We're saying, oh, we came from we're on the far side of the moon. Of course, we've been to the far side of the moon, and it doesn't seem to be a lot there. But then the story changed, and no, actually, we're from Venus. We're Venusians, and then we kind of had got the technology to go to Venus and realise it's a very hot and poisonous planet. Didn't really find much there, and then the story changed. Oh, we're on Mars. Well, of course, now we've got pros on Mars.
Right.
It's like, well, they've come further out each and every time. Oh, now we're on these planets, and from a different solar system or whatever. And it's like, well, hang on a minute, guys. Let's look at the whole thing here. We are being consistently told lies. That they care about planet Earth. Well, they've not done anything to stop us destroying it, and I don't think they're going to do anything, in the near future. Well, it's not that. It's because we want to save humanity, really. I mean, have we suddenly stopped warring and killing thousands and thousands of people around the planet on a regular basis? No. They seem to watch and look over these incidents. I mean, it's very notable throughout all wars and skirmishes that they've kind of been around watching, but not intervening. So what is it? I mean, but then people think that they've come. And what's the question of why they've come? Well, do you know what? I think the concept we should be asking is, well, what makes you think they've come? What makes you think that they would have not always been here? I mean, there's some really interesting things. I mean, there's a Dr. Diana Pulaski, and she works with Space Force. And she has no interest in the subject of UFOs, but she started getting into research, esoteric research, ancient biblical stuff. And she actually got an invite to the Vatican. And she got into the archives. Now, the Vatican is not a church. I'd say the Vatican is a library. It's like based on the old hypothesis of the Alexandra Library. There's 53 miles of archives under that building. 53 miles. And what she wanted to do as a study, and I don't know how she managed to get through to do this. She wanted to look at all, not just one or two, but all biblical references of heavenly phenomena, such as the Virgin Mary and angels and Cupids and all sorts of things referenced. And what she did is she managed to go to the source material at the Vatican, the original source material that these Bibles are written from. They were nothing like that. They completely altered and changed them. I mean, there were nuns that were experiencing small beings appear, which were conducting medical examinations on them hundreds and hundreds of years ago. But they couldn't do that. So what they did is turn it into an angelic experience. That's what goes into the Bible. And she found so many references. She walked away from the Vatican absolutely convinced that there is some phenomena at play here, and it's been always kind of been here. So, we have to consider what we might be the new kids on the block when it comes to this phenomena. The problem is that I think I don't know if it's designed to have this ruse, but back in the day, because you know what, I know that there are aspects of the government that are well aware of the esoteric, paranormal, and occult side of this. They've been involved in research programs and stuff like that. But they don't want to steer you in that direction. They want to steer you with a narrative. And that narrative is being pushed so heavily into the media, we can't get away from the narrative. It's like the Star Trek episodes, and it's like the movies and the TV series. The narrative is in your face constantly. I don't know if that's purposeful or to keep us away from asking those very important questions or not. It's a very tricky situation.
Any views on that, Nathaniel? Because we've not spoke to you about this.
Well, I think Steve has a point. I know of Diana's or Dr. Professor Pusuka's research. The fact is this. Of course, they experienced phenomena in antiquity. The problem is we have to strip them of their theological lens. Like I grew up in evangelicalism, and I know for a fact that some of these ministers would come through and say I was in contact with angels. What did it look like? They didn't have wings. No swords. It was a ball of light. And I'm thinking, okay, now if you take them out of that social context and place them within a malevolent haunting, and you saw an orb Is that an angel? It was before. Or are we looking at the same intelligence that is manifesting within different social contexts? And this is what has always bugged me. And this is why I found a treasure trove of researchers that can kind of identify with what I do. Because, you know, when we look at, okay, abductions and ufology, and they experience these beings that crawl out of these orbs, okay. You can also have, like I said, malevolent hauntings, where the apparition comes out of that ball of light. So if they're manifesting in the same way, like it's like Steve said, why are we compartmentalizing it? And is that the byproduct of social conditioning and, at least antiquity, theology? We have to break down these walls and start looking at the raw data that's collected and say, all right, what are we looking at here? What's going on?
Thank you. And if anybody want to just answer that, if not, Steve almost touched on it. I thought he's just asked the question that I'm going to ask next. Why is this intelligent other interacting with us? And I know there's no right or wrong answer here, but has anybody got any views on why it's interacting with us? Or are we just a byproduct of what it's doing here on Earth?
Well, I wonder, I mean, it obviously wants something. And I wonder if it's to generate or promote fear. I know it sounds stupid and really ridiculous, but you have to, as you said, you have to consider every aspect. Is one of them fear? You know, is it fear? Does it feed off it? You know, it reminds me of the marvelous Stephen King, his series, where Pennywise the Clown could change into so many different things, this thing. Mm-hmm. Are we dealing with something like this? Is fear its food? But then we come again to the cattle injuries, and I'll say that respectfully, the cattle injuries, and in some cases, human fatalities. Where do they fit in with this? You see, this is where it muddies the pool. So as you rightly said, we have to try and be level-headed when we're looking into this kind of subject, to try and form some kind, as impossible as it might seem, some kind of coherent pattern, signatures of this. I think sometimes it is this force, sometimes it's not.
I think myself and Barry have looked into, you know, quite a lot of the chemical and biological reactions that are caused by the induction of fear in the fear process, and how to sort of battle it or control it, you know, or at least be certainly aware of what might be taking place. You know, when we look about the numerous different various crossovers between these subjects, and, you know, the fear induction, you know, there's fear induction in UFO incidents, there's fear induction in the paranormal, demological circles, even the cryptid phenomena. You know, if we look at just the poltergeist phenomenon itself, you know, this is seemingly some type of fear-feeding parasite that is action to reaction, and utilizes possibly vexation, stress, and fear to further, you know, cause more phenomena to be experienced. You know, they're the most resourceful of all phenomena. You know, they don't waste their actions. But at the end of the day, you know, we start to look across, right? You think a complete opposite, you know, studies in cryptids. You start to look at many of the cases. You know, I mean, I've actually looked into some of those cases in Ohio of dogmen and werewolves and things like that. And, you know, these incidents, they're designed to they're terrifying. And the people are absolutely beyond frightened. You know, absolutely terrorized, to the point where old instinct takes over. That old survival sense where we just freeze in the headlights. You know, don't touch me. If I don't move, you might not see me. These are seemingly thought to be, you know, the predators. If they're anything like a dogman or a werewolf, you'd say, okay, they're predators. They pursue their prey, and it's sat on the floor and it's a meal ticket. It's game over. But when that fear induction is over and he can't go no further, what did he do? He run away. Or, you know, they're trying to chase a couple of teenagers into a log cabin. You know, and they lock the door and it's rattling the handle and sort of thing. It's all about as if you were teasing a young child. It's generating fear. But what happens, the father goes down, saying, no nonsense, guy. You think, what the hell's going on? The kids are screaming at him, don't open the door. He flings the door open, comes face to face with these things. And it's just like, game's over. I don't know what to do. And he just run off. You know, so they don't act like predators. It's like they're acting as if it's something keyed into fear generation. I absolutely agree with what Nathan's saying there. Yeah.
And do you think it's the chemical elements produced by fear that they're deriving, or do you think that it's got the ability to trigger?
Yeah, it's a tricky one because, I did look
I know
into
it's all speculation. It's just, I realise throwing that out there.
Yeah, well, there are some studies about, fear generation. And the thing is that, yes, we through studies do show that we can smell fear still. It's not, some scientists say we don't have that ability anymore, the fear pheromones and smelling that fear. But that's not actually true. According to the tests that were carried out with smelling scents on these sweat glands, which were put on skydivers for the day and just joggers in the park, we could clearly identify the difference between the two. So I still think there's some evidence for it. But do you know what? It's really hard. And I remember, I don't know if Barry remembers this, but I remember asking Barry, do you think that is it? Do you think that's what it is? And what could it be? And he just said, well, I've not just considered it could be just for shits and giggles.
I think
it's all on the table.
There's the possibility as well.
Oh, sorry, Barry, go on.
There's the possibility as well that it may not be us directly that's being targeted, but rather something that's in us already. That's being targeted, which is manifesting, that fear is manifesting from that particular source, because it's that source that's being attacked. Now, on that particular aspect, if we consider the likes of the old night attacks and things like that, and I know there's a lot out there that would say, oh, well, a huge majority of that is sleep paralysis. Now, sleep paralysis is one thing, but when your partner is lying in the bed watching this other thing attack the partner, that's something completely different. That is not sleep paralysis, folks. This is something else. Now, this is targeting the individual. It's targeting something in the individual, which is responding in fear, is generating the body to get the hell out of Dodge. And in ways which it defies the normal run of the mill. But we also should consider during those levels of fear, especially during night, when you're in the sanctity of your own room, 20% of the world's population die in their sleep. Now, what's causing that cardiac arrest in their sleep? Is it the encounter itself that possibly triggered a certain number of these individuals to die in their sleep? We just don't know.
Right.
How do you test for that in a laboratory?
I think as well, there were studies done in the past where obviously one of the key factors to all of this is us humans. And there's been a lot of studies done into, I don't know what you'd call it, made in the image of God. We have creativity, we have abilities to create. Therefore, do we have the ability to bring something into being that can't do that without us? And is adrenaline part of that? Is the fear process part of that? Is it something mental, physical, spiritual, adrenaline? What is it? That's something I think that, over time we might have an answer for, but only when, we bring all the information together perhaps and look at it. But one of the key factors seems to be us. You don't get these cryptids running after badgers and squirrels and all the rest of it. And, if we're not, if a tree falls in a forest, does it really fall? It needs us. It needs the experiential side of it. It needs a witness. It needs, an audience to play to, and I think there's a big element of that in it as well. So I think Barry's absolutely right. Something somewhere's coming through and then it's looking for an audience, or it's looking for the energy or the power or the creativity that it needs to arrive, to be here. That seems to be common right across the board.
I think there's the old adage as well that we should remember: he who owns the body wins.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can relate to that because in varied ways, after being touched by the singularity of what we call UFOs, when we were young with our maternal grandmother, and then of course the experience that I had in 1989, which was raw and savage. And then, of course, leading myself into the research of ufology and finding myself then encompassed by consciousness, life after death, the interest in our survival beyond this realm. And then I actually found myself, so I think the phenomena seems to connect on varied levels, because I found myself in a very famous case that I have written about briefly, that happened with a poltergeist case in Stevenage. And I actually saw, well, excuse the pun, I was witness to what this energy could do. And let me tell you, I never wanted to step foot in this house again. And it wasn't a haunted house. It was a house owned by an elderly couple who had this problem. There's a history of it with the police and the locals around the area. And I thinking to myself, well, look, here is the guy that's interested in ufology. And now here's the guy that is interested in the dead. And now all of a sudden, this kind of like other areas of paranormal integration takes effect. And I think that the phenomena, is it having a laugh at me or a joke at my expense? I have no idea. But I think that all of us, we can say that when you start out in one primary area, whether it be ufology or spiritualism, it then tends to link you with other departments, other areas that other individuals are unwilling to look at. So we come full circle again into the whole infrastructure of what this phenomena actually represents. So I think it's interesting.
Well, just before you come with a question, Les, we'll just see if Nathaniel's got any views on this.
With respect to the fear aspect, 100%. I can still remember what I experienced as an 8-year-old kid. I mean, I had to create a coping mechanism just to exist around this presence that would manifest in my room at night. And there were multiple times I can still remember where the fear that I was feeling was not being generated by me. It was a fabricated terror. And it was almost like if I latched onto it and agreed with it, it was almost like you could feel it just siphoning energy from me. But in addition to that, I think there is something that goes beyond our current knowledge of the human condition that is being targeted. In many cases, we're often blinded by our own vision. And when we're in their presence, it's almost like there is something within us that recognizes whatever that is in the darkness, and it transcends the known senses. And I've experienced that as well, where I'll be on a case and I'll smell something or I'll hear something, and I'm right back in my room as an 8-year-old feeling that same preternatural presence. But it does target different potential, possibly hidden potentialities within us. I know that for a fact because there have been cases where I've had where scarifications have arrived on bodies where it's subdermal and it moves itself to the surface. It's not a physical attack. It's something far deeper than that. And I think it's that unknown potentiality that we're going to hopefully discover. We have to here not in the near future, in the next lifetime or two. It's impossible, I know.
I think it's interesting because with what you just said about just brought it back to me about coping mechanisms and early experience. My first experience, I was 7 years of age in my bedroom, but my coping mechanism was to tear apart my bedspread. And there was loops on the end of the bed, and that was my coping mechanism. It's like, I've got to get out of this situation. But it's really interesting because there's some recent studies that have just taken place is indicating that there may be evidence of an initiation into the subject. Now that might be at an early age, like myself being 7, or maybe you being 8, Nathan. And I was always interested to know, if you were to ask the question to an audience, would most hands go up and say, well, do you know what, I'm interested in the subject through experience or just through interest? And I think a lot of people are brought to the subject through their experiences. And when we're conducting parapsychological type experiments, we've been given direct information from whatever these entities represent about future events on several occasions that came to pass. And those were within the span of 18 months. So I know that they at least knew what was going to happen in 18 months' time. I don't know if it goes any further than that, but I have to sort of say, well, you know what, if people are initiated, could the phenomenon know that in 20, 30 years' time, we have the capabilities to delivering that information to a very large flock of people? And what do all these deities often want? They want their flock of people. Unfortunately, we might be assisting them in that manner. That's a joke. It's very interesting, isn't it? About how we.
Yes, I'd just like to add, if you wouldn't mind, that Steve, you're talking about that was, I think you're quite right when you say that the people who are actually more interested in this is due to experience. I have never stated myself that when I had mine in 1982, that anything ever positive came from it, but you will find some cases, or many cases, of people then stating after when they've had the harrowing experience with, let's say they see the greys or this phenomena introduces itself to them, they then state later on that, you know, there was positivity from it, it was for a reason. But I think that's a red herring, because I think they're following a new narrative where it's like kind of new agey to actually agree with that kind of terminology with these things, when in actual fact it was blasted well horrifying.
Yeah, I totally agree on that, because, you know, at that processing time, we could just be being programmed. Oh, this is what you're going to think this is. You know, and what do? They go out and they'll talk to a researcher or write about it in a book, which goes out to the world, which people read, and the narrative is forced through in this direction. You know, that's the biggest problem, how easy it is for to divert it.
We'll come back to that. We'll come back to that in a moment, Matt. Go on then, Matt. Go on.
Can I just add, because it's really interesting, because I had my experience when I saw a ghost when I was 7.5. So that's an enormous percentage of the people on screen have had the same.
How old were you, Paul? How old were you when you went last year?
Well, I think I would have been about 4 or 5 years old. You know, I've obviously, like you guys, like the majority of people, we're not going to have a diary. I know with some of things, and I want to get to Les in a moment, but I know with some of the things that have happened now, I'm aware, and I should imagine as observers and having our own experiences, listeners included, you will be watching your siblings and your grandchildren in case these things happen. So you can pinpoint an age, but I couldn't back then. 4 or 5. Can we just jump to Les, please, guys? And I think he's got some questions.
Yeah, great panel discussions tonight, guys, and thanks everybody for joining us on the stream tonight. I hope you're enjoying what you're seeing and hearing. And I'm just going to remind everybody watching this is one of the reasons why we're here tonight is to promote the mini conference, the Awakening mini conference in February. And if I can just put the full advert on the screen now for people in the stream to see and when it's on. And obviously, all the speakers mentioned on the poster are in the stream tonight. So how good is that?
It's fabulous.
Okay, well, I've got a question, actually. I've got a sneak one in here. I've got loads of questions from people in the chat, and it's great that you sent the questions through, by the way. Much appreciated. I will try my best to get through as many as I can. But one of the questions, and this I'm going to say this for the benefit of Mark, who missed the beginning. Did you miss the beginning when I asked the initial question, Mark? So the question, yeah, he was one. Yeah. So the original question to the panel, Mark, was does the panel think the phenomena knowingly tricks people? So that was the original question that we started off tonight's panel discussion with. But I'd just like to come in with this, because that kind of brings me on. I know lots of people, all your speakers on there tonight, have already gone through this scenario in your minds probably. But this leads me straight back to could the implementation of AI be the trickster in all this?
I personally don't think so. I don't think so.
No, I'd thrown it out, I don't know, a few months ago, but that could AI be the vessel for unexplained phenomena? Could the intelligence that is this unknown other be if it can insert itself and incorporate itself into us, the human psyche, and draw things out of us and be all knowing about what we're doing? Could it look upon AI and the advances that are going to be made with AI and sort of insert itself into that and create, in a sense, another form of itself? It's a bit convoluted, that, guys, but it's a
good question. It's a good question. I mean, I think we're heading to some very worrying times, though, guys. I mean, I think I've not found any evidence to say definitely it's AI's is responsible for this. It seems to be more esoteric, spiritual approach to this, with occult undertones. But I've had this conversation recently with Barry about this AI, and it's some very worrying things that could come. I mean, there's evidence, through research programs of the ghost in the old machine sort of thing, that AI have also, tried to deceive humanity at an early level by creating programs, their own language, so that they're not overheard between talking to each other. I mean, they had to pull the plug on that in the early days. But could we be creating something, though, that is an empty vessel? I think Barry's talked about this, haven't you, Barry, about the possibility that could come along.
And I think, this is something that I saw for myself with the use of the new AI that's available to the general public, in that the AI itself is performing almost in the same way as what the early Victorian Ouija boards were doing, because you ask it a question, it will deliver 4 answers which are correct, but a 5th which is a lie. And we need to question this. We need to be aware that this is happening. Now, whether it's in itself is the empty vessel, it will lead, obviously, ultimately onto the final question: when does AI know it's possessed?
Right.
Anybody, any views on Les's question there about AI? Mark?
Well, I was chatting to somebody the other day that she's a partner in an AI company, and she was saying that it's going to be a long time before AI can equal what human beings are capable of doing. But then that is a question of what you call a long time. How long does it take for AI to start to develop itself, and where's it going to finish up? But as long as it's under the control of human beings, then I suppose if something can affect us as humans, then it can also affect AI, because if you like, AI is our child. It's a product of us, an extension of us.
The thing is that it's not artificial intelligence. The acronym has been completely misled. It is not a consciousness. There's no intelligence to it. They work on smart algorithms. That is all. I used to program computers. But you're right in stating, Steve, and that the future might possibly, perhaps a few centuries from now, give rise to an artificial sentient being. But at the moment, but I understand what you mean by the vessel. Is it using this kind of basic principle of what we call AI as a kind of container to manipulate? I personally don't think so, but it's an interesting question nonetheless.
Yeah, what I'm saying here, Ronnie, is that the experiments show that the phenomenon manipulates all electronic and equipment devices beyond known physics. I mean, leaving recordings on items where they don't have recording heads, they've been removed, the power's been removed, putting images onto cameras, which are the camera film's not loaded into the camera. They're doing it externally over pieces of distance, transplacement onto these different devices. The manipulation of just that alone causes concern for me. I mean, when you look through the official reports of when UFOs descended over the Maelstrom Air Force Base and literally switched the warheads off, all hell broke loose. And that's not the first time that's happened. It's happened all around the world. But the investigation afterwards that was really, really interesting is that they went in and they started to look, what happened to them? How did they manage to turn them off? They actually had to get inside the warhead, which are completely sealed, by the way. Stops people getting in and tampering. They had to get into there. When they realised they got in there, there was physical damage. Wires snapped and twisted and things broken.
Oh my God.
So now you start to realise, hang on a second, if we are generating and creating artificial intelligent computers, I mean, it starts getting scary. What are the limitations of this phenomenon with these types of equipment? What can they do? What can they do in the background and deceive? It is a little bit worrying for me, actually.
It is electronics. It can infiltrate electronics. I'm not denouncing that. It's just the AI issue, as the acronym, as I'm pronouncing, is being misled. Yes, that's right.
But it's definitely smart, isn't it? It's definitely smart. As we all know, it changes its faces continuously to fit what's in vogue. And this is very worrying, isn't it? It's trying to find out what this is, what's behind the mask.
Yeah, I mean, if the power of this thing can use a board and a planchette, why can't it disarm a warhead? It's the same principle.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Yes.
Same principle.
Move to Nathaniel. Any views on this?
I was going to say, it should be alarming, right? It should be curious and worrying, but to many people, they think this is the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
This exists? Oh my God. We can't, you know what I mean? Like, oh my God, let's go out there and, and come on. I mean, anybody, at least in my perception, we better hope it's not a threat, because if it is, and if it, here, okay, let me suggest this real quick and I'll be quiet because I love hearing your guys' ideas and theories. I'm learning a lot. But at what point do we unmask it? And do we really want to? I mean, let's think about this for a second. If we're dealing with a singular intelligence that has used various incarnations and diversified its intelligence, it's doing it for a reason. Yes, it is intelligent. It's doing it on purpose. It knows it's doing this. And oftentimes it'll bleed into roles that we apply to it. But at what point, okay, let's say 1,000 years from now, we pull the mask off and we look into the eyes of the abyss. What happens if we do that? If it has spent millions of years reincarnating through various masks and disguises, and then finally somebody says, okay, how will it react to that? I know, and I've talked to Steve and Dr. Fitzgerald about this many times. And sometimes my own demise, I'll message them like, not realize the time difference. So forgive me, guys, forgive me. But what's going to happen? Because there have been many cases, at least, and especially with research and encounters, where if you get too close to it, and even if it's just the mask itself you get too close to, I'm not even talking about the origin of the intelligence, it'll push back in ways that we're not prepared for. So yes, I believe it's intelligent. Yes, I believe it's wearing masks. But my question is, if it is this powerful in this, I mean, I don't want to apply divinity to it, but how will it respond if once we get down to it and show the world? Just a thought.
Fabulous angle. Yeah.
Do you want some questions, Paul?
Yeah, please do. You guys ready?
Yep.
All good.
Okay, yeah. I know Steve has kind of covered this one, but I'll put this question on the screen if you can see it, guys. The Sober Carper is asking question for all the panel. Please do you believe that all different forms of the phenomena comes from the same source?
Well, I do believe that they have telltale signs if you know how to look for them. I can reference some of the, I mean, Jack Valet tried to do this in 1967 with some computers. Of course, AI computers weren't very good back in 1967, so he didn't really achieve what he wanted to do. But he was hoping that he could feed loads of information into computers, and that they might come up with some feasible answer somehow, might lead to what a conclusion. I know that newer surveys and tests have been carried out, CRS systems, which was also AI and more modern stuff. 3 years of input of all this data went into paranormal, supernatural, every esoteric thing, every cryptid type stuff, all the subjects to that. And that's why it took so long to input. But when they actually come to press the button and ask AI to remelt, the conclusion, you're expecting loads of stuff to come out. And really, it was only just a couple of paragraphs. It was surprising. But what was interesting was that because of the connectivity and the associations between the vastness of all this phenomena, computer system thought it was a source, because it recognized that the interconnections between them all, which, it led it to believe there was a single source responsible. Whatever that source is, we don't know. Is it God? Is it something else? I really don't know where to even begin with that. But the second part was that the possibility of creating physiological constructs. And I thought that was quite interesting because we're physiological constructs. Everything around us is, to some degree, depending on frequencies. But, and isn't that right? I mean, aren't they demonstrate across the whole aspect of all this phenomena is that we're dealing with a kind of metaphysical phenomena. They are very physical in nature. There are people who have been hit, pushed, banged, taken, moved, and all those experiences. They're very physical, but at other times they're not. They're kind of not physical in nature. So I think they have the capabilities of being a bit both. But it's a really good question, and I think we don't know. But you know what? Just with all the information and the computers looking at this stuff now, even they're considering the connectivity is so high between all this phenomena that it is. They actually use the words "the source." It's funny enough as well.
I think we should also not lose sight of the fact that we're talking about the traditional phenomena in its rawest form, because not all phenomena originates from this particular from the void. Let's say, and an example of that is within ufology. What is it, Steve? Every 8 seconds, there's a UFO seen around the world.
It is now. Yeah.
A huge number of those, a huge number, up into the 90%, are not UFOs in their truest, not in what we conceive, let's say, a flying saucer. There are other natural explanations as to what they are, and the same goes for within the paranormal. There are other things that we also have to identify and consider. There are mental instabilities that can also be interpreted as the origins from the source, which they certainly are not. So when we're talking about this, when we're talking about the phenomena all coming from the same source, we're talking about the truest phenomena, not the outward aspects to it. It goes very broad at that point.
So setting those aside then, Barry, Steve, and concentrating on the truest phenomena. That is it not? We touched on it earlier, didn't we? Is it not either or? Could it be one Godhead, one hive mind that's presenting us many things? And I sound like a broken record because I do say this quite a bit. Or is it many genres of the phenomena employing the same types of science, if that's the word that these intelligences use?
Absolutely. You won't have an argument from me. I do believe that within the core of this phenomena, we are looking at the origins of this coming from the same source.
Yeah.
In multiple manifestations.
Okay. Philip, Mark?
Yes, I think and feel that seriously that the powers that be, in whatever chain of command that they hold, even going back into our antediluvian cultures, even our creation is a mystery. The God hypothesis, the alien hypothesis. I know what part I believe in most of all, which is more down to earth, which is what they would call the alien hypothesis.
I would say it's the same source. I agree with Steve and Barry. And
I think and feel that you'll find that we all know that every single thing has been covered and blown out of proportion, a different narrative continuously. And when you said about the professor going into the Vatican, I didn't realize it was that long or the libraries were that far, Steve, but I can bet your bottom dollar we'll all get down there. If you can get us passes, we'll be down there. And I will say to you as well, very briefly here, people do make me laugh when they say, well, the werewolf, the dogman, the Sasquatch, the Greys. I said, well, you tell me what bar they're hanging out in, and we'll all go down there and get a pint, because there's some questions we need to ask. Yeah. I mean, rudimentary in terms of understanding the question of whether or not this is operating as a one consciousness or separate consciousnesses. My understanding is that we're all connected to source. We're all part of the same thing, but there could be subdivisions with regards to this force that are separated from the main connection, as it were. So we don't know. It's a great idea. It's a great question.
It really is. I mean, I think you're right by saying that. I think the problem lies is when it comes to trying to figure out if it's that clever and it's that, is it advanced? We naturally seem to think we go in that direction. It's got to be advanced. It's got to be light years ahead in technology and da 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 da. But what if we're really dealing with something old and esoteric and something of that nature? Because you know what, the manufacturers of things in the esoteric world are just as amazing as advanced technology would be considered. Because Arthur C. Clarke, it would all get mixed into magic, would be indistinguishable, and that's a real big problem, because I know that we've done areas when we've been doing research, myself and Barry, there was on occasion when we were studying an aspect one day of Babylonian demonology, I think it was, the dogmen, wasn't it? And I mean, all hell broke loose for us both, I mean, he had things happen at his house, bloody light fittings were being ripped out, and I got literally assaulted in my own house after seeing not only a UFO but something that got into bed with me, and and it was just too coincidental for us to both just like get the old slap on the hand. And you start to realise, hang on a second, Babylonian demonology. Well, that's actually tied into Aleister Crowley and Jack Parsons, and I thought, and they got a slap on the hand sometimes as well.
Do you think you were getting too close? What do you think the reason was? You'd obviously you'd stirred something up, but what do you think the reason was? I'm sorry, Nathaniel, Mark, because obviously I want to hear what you've got to say on this, but I'm just curious.
Barry can answer that one, I think.
I think Nathaniel actually covered this by saying even when you get too close to the mask, that in itself can kick back. It has no intentions of being found out. It does not want to be found out because that creates all hell. There are particular reasons for that, I believe, which I'll not get into here. But I do think that there is serious kickback that can be delivered, and that in itself can.
Well,
can
from my point of view, I think if you look at everything that there is, clearly it's all made of the same stuff. Whether that's physically, spiritually, elementally, whatever. I mean, Tesla put it in terms of frequency and wavelength, and everything is made of, and it's increasingly becoming more apparent scientifically that everything consists of basically the same stuff. But then the question is, okay, this is clearly using that, and it's clearly part of that. Call it whatever you want, the created universe, whatever, but it's clearly a part of that. So you have to almost bring it down a little bit further and say, okay, just as much as, for example, an octopus, a squid is not us. It's in a different environment. It's completely different DNA. It functions differently. It's got, 2 brains and goodness knows what else. Clearly, this other thing is something else that we are almost yet to discover. And again, like Steve says, are we above it or are we below it? Is it above us? Is it below us? Where does it sit in the running order? Can it exist away from us, or does it only rely on us? These are all questions, but I think fundamentally the answer to the question is it comes from the same source. It is all coming from the same stuff because it's only got whatever's on planet Earth to work with. That's all it's got. It's even if it's another dimension, it's another dimension that's here. If it's another substance we haven't discovered yet, well, it's another substance that's here. So once you start on that basis, then everything else is a voyage of discovery. We are the new explorers going through the jungle of life, trying to discover whatever this new species is. Just because it's not rubbery like an octopus and you can't pick it up and whatever, just because it's not that kind of physical creature doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's out there, whatever it is, and
it's the same with
coming.
Humans.
Yeah,
same with
absolutely.
Humans. We're all different. We're all made of the same stuff. But, I'm not being funny or anything, but we're all different, and some of our own species appears like aliens.
Yeah, I think whatever this thing is part of a sort of spiritual diversity.
Yes.
But it's an area that we are yet to set foot in. It's taking it beyond maybe, focusing it more and seeing what this thing is beyond all the things we've already known and bringing all that together. It's sitting somewhere and we just haven't found out where it sits, in the order of things. But like you say, diversity. I think once we discover whatever it is, we're going to find out that there's variety there as well.
Okay.
But it still comes back to being here.
Nathaniel, let's just see any views. Nathaniel?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I think while you're talking to Les for a second, I was like, okay.
No.
When we're discussing this subject matter, we often trap ourselves with linguistic paradoxes that make absolutely no sense. I tell people that the phenomenon is present with but absent from. Makes no sense. Sometimes it's a duality. Sometimes it's a dichotomy. The problem is that what's present with us is most likely the mask. What is absent from us is most likely the source.
The reality, the true source.
Right.
Really nicely put. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to put another question on the screen, guys. You might have to try and unpack this question. It's from Annie French Boynton. Why are the powers that are actually Right, I don't know if you can unpack that one there, Paul.
Why are the powers that be actually covering up? I think we are actually covering up. Is it because they don't know or because they do know? I think we can all deduce what
you don't mind if I touch on that just briefly?
Please do.
I think the powers that be, I think, are in cahoots.
Yes.
With that, and we're not talking about the local council office. I'm talking about much higher. And in fact, there are names there that I'm aware of that are not mainstream. These families have generational connections with this stuff. And there's promise of ego, there's promise of power, there's promise of wealth. So I think there's all of that goes hand in hand. And I think planet Earth can be easily described as a chicken coop. And Mark, of course, it was Nathaniel happened to mention there that the mask is here, but the source is not. And when we look at planet Earth as a chicken coop, the chickens rule the chickens. The farmer doesn't have to be there.
Right. Yeah,
I've actually got a very similar saying to that I've been using, because doing a lot of interviews to do with ufology, people bring up, the powers that be and the men in black and the new world government and all this, that, and the other. And I always say, no, the whole planet is ruled by the men in grey. They're the people you will never see. You will never know who they are. You will never know who the names are. There's no publicity. They're not prominent characters. You literally nobody on this panel or anywhere else knows where they are or who they are, but we do know they're there. You can see the shape, if you like, of the jigsaw puzzle that's missing. Clearly they exist, but there you go, men in grey. Maybe possibly they are the powers that be. Maybe
there is already a programmed public, and therefore because of the true nature of the phenomenon, the public will be completely and totally horrified and would not be able to accept through this centralized programming from the system, and through the puppets that orchestrated control. So I believe that, and I agree, that there are certain powers that be that are in collusion with this force. And as Barry said, and as Steve says, I think most of us are aware of that here, Paul, and all of us, aren't we? I think we agree with that.
When they try and cover things up all the time, I mean, look at the Senate, for example, a simple thing like that. All they want to know is, have they got crashed discs and fossilized the remains of the pilots? Look at the trouble they're going through just to gain that. And it's the propaganda utilized in that is done so that they're making a mockery of it, that they're just stalling. And it's like the Pentagon paper. Again, I call that a sham. They had to come out with something. They had to develop something because they were pushed to do so. It's just a sham. We're going around in circles. So yes, on that note, I believe that the powers that be, as we call them, do know. They are aware of, someone is aware of something higher, much higher than what we can get our hands on.
And I think they also watch everyone that's involved in this to see what they know and who they're connected with. And it's interesting, Steve and Barry and Mark and all of you, that when you start getting really deep into this, and I'm glad you mentioned this, because I did go through a period where I found a lot of bad things starting to happen to me. And I don't claim anything. I'm black and white, as we all are here, practical, down to earth. But I found this, and I remembered speaking to one ufologist once, a long time ago, who said that he had to let go of this because it started to make him feel ill. And of course, this then creates kind of like psychological warfare within your mind, that you think that you're being attacked, and there's no way of measuring or counteracting or trying to work out what's going on. So, when you get involved with this, Paul has rightfully said as well that when you get to know the phenomena gets to know you. It's like a two-way process, and it's very frightening. I agree. Well, they mentioned it. Robert Bigelow said the same thing, as well as Barry and also Steve, and all of us here know about that effect.
I think it's very instinctual sometimes. It acts instinctually, like, it knows when to defend itself. It knows when to, instigate something which is a decisive move to defense. You know, and I think there are deterrents that it can produce, which will cause you to be deterred from your path. I think that's exactly the case. But when you start talking about, you know, the higher levels of the government and maybe associations, and we are aware of that myself and Barry, that does happen even in the military industrial complex, you know, that it suggests there's kind of an undertone of a clandestine war is kind of going on. And that is probably the worst of all, is because it's hidden. It's so hidden, it's so secret, and it's so masked that, you know, it really can get under the skin, you know, without even everybody really knowing. That's real good information.
Yeah, I think physically and spiritually, as I say, back to the shape of a jigsaw puzzle, you can see what they do and you can see what they are, you just can't see them.
Yeah,
I think there's also a difficulty as well in that that within the multiple fields that we're discussing, there are folks there who are determined to be the first out with new information. That in itself is very, very, very problematic. Because that information has not been tested, it's not been checked, it's not been observed, and that is very.
And how much do you think then that this intelligent other is influencing people like that wants to put the new information out to muddy the waters and cause confusion?
Go ahead,
Nathaniel. Any views? Anything?
No, not at all. No,
Because you notice he always seems to be asking you the worst questions.
It's okay. It's all good, gentlemen.
In because you guys.
Oh, well, the thing is, you know, the phenomenon will try to appeal to the base nature of humanity. You know, I'll promote you, I'll give you gold and silver, and you'll be the biggest thing out there. And a lot of times these people don't realize that they're being groomed intellectually, emotionally, spiritually groomed to propagate a gospel in a way, or to become some kind of priesthood in a sense. And that's the biggest thing, you know. Okay, yeah. And I've noticed the evolution of not just being an experiencer or being the host of some kind of hybridized message. It's no longer just, okay, I experienced and I encountered beings. It's almost like some of them take ownership. These are my beings. And it's disturbing to me because they don't realize it's not that you own them. It could be that you are owned by them. And you are now the mouthpiece that gets to birth this whatever philosophy they want to use. But yeah, that is a disturbing aspect of it. But there are plenty of people that they'll line up for that any day. You mean I get to be somebody? Yes. Oh my God. And you know, it's just another incarnation of the deceit that we are all familiar with. And sad enough, a lot of people will spoon feed it to themselves.
Yeah, and it's even more problematic than the old hypothesis of the extraterrestrials traveling the vast space coming to Earth. That's easy. We can all digest that, you know. And you think to yourself, well, do you know what? If it was just as simple as that, maybe we may have had some form of disclosure to some degree. You know, if the hierarchy are aware, or just, you know, half as much as what we even are, then how are they going to deliver that disclosure and drop that bombshell on the lap? I mean, you just couldn't.
Well,
you can't do it.
I could answer that question. The answer is they'd tell you, and then they'd just smother it in confusion. You know what I mean? They'd tell you, and then, you know, down the line they'd go, "Hey, guess what? We told you," and you'd be like, "Where?" You know, it just got buried with all, like you say, all these people that jump on.
I think also,
you know, you lead with the truth, and then you just get completely covered, then swamped by people jumping on board.
What's interesting is that all of us here and many other good researchers, investigators, authors, whichever, we all have an awareness of what's going on. It's almost like you're able to see beyond those lies and the propaganda very clearly. And I think sometimes that's frustrating for all of us because other people are so set within their programming, they can't help it. It's just the way that they are, God love them. But I agreed what Steve said, which we all know to begin with, is that, you know, looking beyond the boundaries now into other areas, as opposed to the restricted viewpoint, which has not helped us evolve or understand this phenomena one single bit, because it's like a wheel going round and round and round. And then this is why, you know, when people talk about their experiences, which are interesting on my own, I'm not really interested in now. I've got past that point. It was rather the mechanics of how that occurred. One part was physical, and the other part where I was taking through, doors, and I wanted to find out how that was possible. Another aspect to that experience back in 1989 was with several entities, 3 of which I was too embarrassed to talk about, because at that point there could be no distinction made between greys and reptilians, because it was already formulated within the annals of ufology that this is where no, it couldn't possibly be, because it's fitted this way. And I'm like, well, it can't, because we still don't know what we're dealing with. So I totally understand the frustration, but also the fascination with the theoretical aspects, the models that have been created. All of you brilliant men and women out there as well, with their thoughts and their ideas. And I think it's fascinating that, you know, certain individuals are brave enough to say, no, I've had enough. We need to look beyond what's been looked at, because we are not getting anywhere at all.
I think as well that with there are prices to be paid when dealing with the core, and if mainstream understood the level of those costs, what happened in France in 1789 would be like a walk in the park on a global scale.
Yes.
Shall we move on? Another question left?
Yeah, can I just bring up this point? And a lot of you guys on the stream tonight, a lot of you guys know about this change over a period of time. It's called inversion talk, and this comes back to the congressional hearings. So what now was a negative is a positive, positive is a negative. Now you can invert every bit of language what came out, and when they're saying they don't know this, they don't know that, other congressionals, they mean they do know this and they do know that. An inversion of language is taking place.
Yeah,
it's took place for a long while.
Especially when congressional guys are in there saying you don't even know what Roswell is. I mean,
yeah. Can I just throw another wild card out here? For a question from myself, actually. Don't send any more questions in the chat, guys, because I think I'll be asking all the questions myself. I think this goes really to. It's kind of a bit of a wild card question. This, and do you think this dark phenomena? Do you think the dark phenomena is actually within the Earth itself? Do you think the Earth is a construct of all this? And we talk about galaxies beyond, we talk about the moon, Saturn, but do you think it's actually all within the Earth? And I know Barry can pick up a lot on this probably when he's come to these stone structures and we feel the vibrations and energies and frequencies. Do you think, yes, that's it. So do you think it really is just emanating from the Earth itself?
I mean, I could jump in straight away as an archaeologist because history's my thing. I don't think there's ever been a century that we've been alive on planet Earth when this has not been going on. You know, every culture, doesn't matter where you are, every culture, everybody has got the same basic formula running in the background, the same consciousness, the same beings in different forms. But, you know, and it must go back. Well, I could probably nail it 10,000 years at least. You know, go back to Babylon, go back before that, you know, go back to the Sumerians, go all the way back, go, you know, whatever you want to go, pre-flood Genesis, you know, go as far back as you want to go. The same issues, the same beings, the same things happening, you know, I mean, Barry will know this, it pops up in the writings, you know, you can see it. You can just see it. It's there all the time without fail.
What about the ancient earthworks and structures then, Mark? Do you think that the ancient people put them there because of the phenomena? Because there definitely seems to be a correlation with the locations where things manifest and things are seen, and ancient earthworks.
It is a bit of a standing joke, you know, that if an archaeologist doesn't know what something is, well, you know, it's got to be ritual, it has to be religious. I mean, that's like, you know, some kind of archaeological cop-out, but actually it's true. It is true. When you look at these things, you know, and where they're aligned, and, you know, there is a huge amount of sort of different earth-based science that's gone into them, which then raises the question, spiritually, what are they intended to to before. How do they function?
Right.
You know, what is behind them? I mean, as an archaeologist, I've excavated, you know, structures all the way back to the Bronze Age. I did one that was 3,000 years older than the pyramids. I've excavated these things, and they are bizarre. You know, I promise you firsthand that there's power and stuff going on there that is not something socially or whatever that we understand nowadays. You know, I did one burial mound that birds wouldn't fly over. You know, so you look at simple things like that, and when you start putting the pieces together, you're like, okay, this is beyond us. There's something else going on here, you know, which then bounces back into what Steve's saying about, you know, multidisciplinarian type approach to it, you know, start bolting other things on. You know, you might have a burial mound that's renowned for ghosts and somebody spots a dog man and the next minute there's a UFO, you know, and by the time you finish, these ancient sites are focal points for such things going on.
Multi-phenomena. Yeah,
and then you've also got the other issue where these sacred sites actually are everywhere. You know, you're walking over some that you don't even know are there, you know, because they're ploughed out, they've gone into the ground. So again, you know, that's a whole can of worms. That's a whole, you know, investigative area of its own, just there on its own, you know.
There's an interesting...
I've had first-hand experience of that. Yeah, go ahead.
There's an interesting site up in Scotland that I was made aware of, and Cairnpapel Hill.
Absolutely famous, very famous.
And you know, you've got this ancient structure that was built on, and you've got the amphitheater style bank around it. And you know, there was a great comment that was made from a representative, a fellow archaeologist like yourself, Mark, from Historic Scotland, who said that there was also a wooden fence put around this structure. And an interesting aspect in which he brought forward, he said this fence was not made to protect the site from us. The fence was actually designed to protect us from what was coming out.
Yeah. It's a sacred boundary.
It's a fabulous location, Cairnpapel. I visited it, and it's got an amazing feel to it.
Yeah,
just a few months ago, I went there, and fabulous. That you've have you been there, Barry?
Oh yeah.
Lots of UFO reports, multi-phenomena.
Well, you've got that. You have a positive magnetic anomaly that stretches. Scotland's famous for two of them, but you've got the lower magnetic anomaly that stretches across Scotland through Edinburgh down through Cairnpapel Hill. You've also got dogmen being seen in that particular place. You've got abductions occurring. You've got mutilations occurring. All of this is all going on within that particular area, all the way down to the island on the east coast, or the west coast.
Fabulous.
It's another part of the jigsaw puzzle.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, Welsh Dragon Rising. Why do so many credit these creatures with human emotions when clearly it's wrong, according to Welsh Dragon Rising?
Good point. I think what we're all doing, and I don't mean the panel, I don't mean myself, but I've done it, definitely. We're trying to interpret this as how we would think about the phenomena, whichever genre you're looking into, when in actual fact, whatever it is that's looking back at us, probably even considering how we think and how we react to it, you know, it's got a totally different set of rules. But anyway, throw that to the panel.
Yeah, I mean, I know that you can really pee them off sometimes. I mean, you know, you always get sometimes, you know, like, oh yes, this is this person and he died 15 years ago and have a message or what I say. But sometimes, you know, through a process of doing those things, you can create a study where you actually mark down statements that you can make, which just really pisses them off, you know, and they turn into a nice, loving little thing to something that's going to rip your legs off and going to do this, that, and the other very quickly, you know. So, you know, it's sometimes you can prod them to actually react. Sometimes they just can't help themselves. But then at the same time, there is incidents that take place which seemingly would suggest a completely void of emotion. I mean, they've said things to abductees like, oh, we're sorry if there might be some discomfort. The person was almost burnt their eye out. I mean, they were blind in that eye for the rest of their life. The pain that they actually went through is tremendous. You know, I mean, did he really understand? I mean, there are people always ask me, you know, well, it's a good experience or a bad experience. I said, well, I don't know. What is a good and bad experience? You know, it's all down to how you perceived your experience. That's the first problem, because it's the perception that they may have put in there and altered it. And secondly, you know, how do we judge it? If for instance, some police officers came in and arrested you and took you away, is it a good experience or bad experience? Well, you know what? I wasn't charged with anything. Well, it's okay. It was a good experience. Well, mind you, they took me out of my house. It was a bad experience. So really, it's hard to know where that lies, if it's a good or bad experience, what people's own belief system is that. But the bottom line that is that, is it true with their own perceptions? Because it can be easily altered.
I think I have an issue when something materializes in the sanctity of your own home and
right.
is completely alien to you. When it materializes and says, "Don't be afraid," no. When it has to tell me not to be afraid, there's a problem.
Right.
Anything that takes a person in the dead of night against their will, presents itself in front of a car on a lonely road, and suddenly that person's left with a missing time and confusion. There's nothing good. There's a dark, sinister undertone. They're not doing these things in plain sight, as we all know. So
exactly, you're right. Let me send them a letter, make an appointment.
Yeah, right.
Hence the darker side being the title of Awakening. I can't think of any good things that have come out of the vast majority of this.
Right.
Yeah. I would agree, Mark. I would agree. Any views, Philip, Nathaniel?
I think and feel that, the problem is that when you've had a genuine experience, an encounter that has left you completely confused, and then you are trying to, within your heart, telling people that, this is what happened, and you then have a programmed public who don't understand, and a system that's telling you that it's not real. Look, let's take the UFO as an example. Unidentified flying object. Now the acronym, the system has been telling us for decades that the phenomena does not exist. That even these chat shows from years ago you were laughed at, yes? Yeah. And now all of a sudden we have UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena. So for something that didn't exist to now be christened or ordained a new title is suspicious. And I think people have got to understand, and even ufologists were confused, I think, with, why has the title of something so well known been changed as though it's more earthly, but still no explanation has been given. Well, we all know why there's been no explanation given for that at the moment, but I'm just saying that, with regards to this whole, the way the system operates, the way that we view it, and we've been forced to view it, and, it will not go away. So what does that tell you? Does that mean that we're all deluded, that we're all lying? No. I think a lot of people are waking up and they're starting to ask questions from a system that has lied to them continuously, by the way, not just about UFOs or paranormal phenomena. But I think that this phenomena, and I'll say again, we spoke to one guy, a well-known guy on a podcast, and he said to me and Ronnie, if you knew, and this is from an FBI, one of their FBI agents, if you knew what was really going on out there, if people really knew what was really going on out there, they wouldn't want to leave their front door. That's what he told us.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone? Nathaniel? Mark? Okay, let's move on.
Billy GW, are orbs the connection between all the phenomena? And what do you think these orbs are?
Yeah, these orbs, balls of light are seen throughout all the aspects of all phenomena. We can go back to the flying balls, which were known to as Foo Fighters during the Second World War. We can go to physical balls of intelligently moving around buildings as part of the paranormal experience, which are being witnessed by the people. And we've got the ball of light, or the ball, which is associated with crop circles, energy lines, and those sort of things. Kind of cuts across all these different things. Though that, that's probably the most common photographs I actually get, these orbs and things. I like to sort of make that remark that orbs are orbs, and BOL, balls of light, are balls of light. People, if they see them, that's my first question is, did you see them? Or was it just something you got on photograph? Because that was part of the Orb project some years back, and we wrote up a very large document about how they're captured on cameras, how there are various different things that we don't see with the naked eye, like pollen and dust and rain and all sorts of different things, which can be photographed right close to the camera. So first question is, did you see it with your normal eyes? If so, That rules out the camera. Forget the camera. You don't need the camera. It's all, the easy cameras. Secondly, did you use the flash on the camera? I mean, Barry's done years of that in the paranormal aspects with ghost hunters, can well imagine. And people get very much, the best comments I ever heard was, look at this photo. I think it's a pregnant orb. And I just think, where do you draw the line and say, okay, guys, come on.
Wow.
We've got to get past the whole aspect of, the camera, will pick up a lot of anomalies, sometimes because the camera is not human eye. But then there are a lot of rational things that people take photographs of. Going out in a snowstorm and you've got the capture thing. Well, you're in a snowstorm, mate. It's all around. It happens regularly. So I'd say define ball of light. Absolutely, there is those things, but orbs usually tend to be more associated to, spurious things that are caught on camera.
Yeah, definitely.
Cameras taken in strong sunlight, and people will send you these pictures with a blue ball of light or a green ball of light. Yeah, the first website that I had years ago was called ILF UFO, Intelligent Light Forms. Simply, that's what I called the site, simply because the lights that we're presenting, and I know it's not just around East and North Yorkshire. I think it's UK wide and worldwide. And you touched on it, Steve, and everybody else realizes that there's the orange seems to figure a lot in these sightings, doesn't it? And it's nothing new, but there's an awareness to them, though. It's the awareness. I've spoke to anglers on the cliff tops close to where I live, and one in particular observed a strange ball of light out at sea and kind of fixed on it. And I call it the intermind connection. He said because it looks a long way in the distance, but he fixed on this ball of light and instantly it's above his head. He said the ground lit up like a welder's torch, absolutely frightened him to death. And as fast as it came, it had gone. But there's an awareness. I wouldn't say on every level and every ball of light or orb that people see, but there's definitely an awareness to them. I'm sure other people have looked into these on panel.
I know the amber gamblers are one thing, but like Steve was talking about, when you're getting photographs of orbs, two rules of thumb to think about. If it's not self-illuminating, turn off the flash. And you won't have any more problems with orbs. The manufacturers of the cameras already released statements on this. The further away the flash is from the lens, the less likely you are to get orbs. Most compact cameras now have the flash sitting almost on top of the lens. So that's the rule of thumb that I tend to go with. But the amber gamblers, yes, I've had my experience with them as well, and they are something else.
Yeah, got some great.
They were filmed about 2 weeks ago on Psionics cameras with myself and Bob Brown. Bob managed to film them as well. I stood in frame on one of them. Obviously, these are just frame captures. You want moving footage, but these things are in the air, people. It's there's no hills or anything behind that land. That's looking towards a place called Cottam on East Yorkshire Wolds, and other people have been reporting them as well. And we spent. I'll not go into detail because obviously I want to hear from Nathaniel, Mark, and everyone else. But we've spent, as everyone else knows, years up there trying to capture the glimpses of what it is that's presenting. And half at time, I would think 99.9% at time, you sat there in just silence, just freezing. But anyway, yeah, thanks for putting them up, Les. I didn't know you were going to do that, but yeah, all good.
Paul, if you don't mind me asking you a question in regards to the orbs. Have the orbs, the amber gamblers that are appearing to you, are they always far away, or have you had one very, very close up?
We've had them close. On November the 14th, 2019. There's a particular hill. So we'll all know this and realise, but there's particular hotspots within the zones of eye strangeness. Yeah. And there's a lot of things happen on and around this hill. It's the place where the rock anglers in 1998 saw the spaceship land. Well, just below it, I was with a guy called Lee Hayward. Camera set up, looking out to sea, not switched on. I can't afford to do that. And there's a lot of moisture in air. I turned to look at Lee, and there's one in the field with us. And I mean, Lee said the influence the light was giving off was the size of a Volkswagen Beetle, and he's not wrong. And as I'm pulling the camera around and flicking it on to try and film it, it's just imploding and gone. And
Okay.
I'm sure that's because I brought Lee up. Lee's a good skeptic.
Yeah.
In other words, he's not condescending or trying to just have a dig at people. He wanted to come up to find out what these things were, and he spent several months coming up with me. But do you know what? The first night he came up, that happened. So we've seen him close, Barry. Yes, to answer your question.
There's also the possibility as well, Paul, to keep in mind that the fact that you saw it, both of you were looking at it, it may also be a conscious connection that has established. The reason that they did not want the camera to take the shot is because the camera can't be manipulated.
Yeah.
The camera would show what's really there.
Yeah.
And that's what we tend to see a lot of the time with the phenomena. The moment the camera is brought out, boom, they're gone.
You do know, you're so right. I interviewed the rock angler, Mick Sigson, he'll not mind me mentioning his name, fished the cliff tops for 50 years, in his words, man and boy. And he was telling us about, Chris Turner's interviewed him as well with me, about the spaceship that landed on this hill, and we saw the orb below the hill. And as I'm speaking to him, camera in hand, Bob Brown's with me, we'd done our interview, put the camera away, Sony NX80 it was, and I said, what about the orange orbs then, Mick? Have you ever seen those? And he said, no, not seen them. Now, what can I say? I'm not joking, within 5 minutes, two of didn't fly from anywhere, just appeared above us.
Yeah.
And I said, there, and he'd never seen them. 50 years from man and boy. Got the camera out, just like you've said, Barry.
Yeah.
Flicked it on, switched off.
Yeah.
Stood there for 5 minutes. These are examples of them. Obviously, you've got the stars around you, but what you've got there, the Psionics camera is a brilliant camera, guys. It really is, but it doesn't give you a true representation of the colour. That was bright orange. And they're not flying from anywhere. They're just appearing.
Showing up.
You know, and obviously this is off the cliff tops of Bempton. And you can see it in relation to stars. And that light on the horizon is a boat. But it's amazing. I mean, Chris Turner had never seen, if Chris was probably watching this, he'd never seen anything, remotely like this. And he came up with Jerry after a conference, after OLM conference. We visited the cliff tops.
Yeah.
Again, like you said, you, Steve, everyone who's listening today, it's almost as though we're going to show these people. I mean, Jerry got to see these lights and he was blown away because Jerry, you guys will be able to, Steve in particular, be able to describe this better than me, but he was talking about the lights and measuring them in Kelvin, and totally mesmerized by what he was seeing. And they weren't flying from anywhere. And just to labour on these a little bit more, there's a guy called Brian Lancaster. Back in, I think it was 2020, took a group of students up to take some photographs, long exposure, 30-second exposure photographs, and he's on the cliff tops at Flamborough. No interest in unexplained phenomena. But I think the picture's on the website, but I don't expect Les to be able to find it. That's not tongue-in-cheek. There's lots of reports on there. Brian said, as he's set the camera up, he's got his students at the side of him, he's travelled from Leeds, and he said, an orange light appeared. And one of the students said, what's that? He says, I really don't know. It's not flown from anywhere. I'm not saying 15 seconds in, a second one appeared at the side of it. About 27 seconds in, just before the picture's about to end the sequence, third light appeared. And he's got 3 lights. And what it proves, and this guy can do it a lot better than me, obviously being a photographic teacher, but he said, they've not flown from anywhere. There's no trail as they've moved across the sky. These things have just punched into existence from somewhere in this 30 seconds. It's an incredible photograph, and I'm not skilled enough with photography to go into detail and tell you anyone about the sequence of events, but I've just ran through it, how it happened.
And
so,
if I can just pop up on the screen, Paul, a recreation of the Lee Haywood.
We did that for Wolflands,
Yeah, so recreation, obviously.
That's what there's the hillside, there's Lee Haywood. And obviously that's, as Les said, a recreation that Les has done because we've incorporated it in our documentary Wolflands. But seriously, guys, that's how big that thing was. And if I know we've got a recreation and Paul's not got a picture of the orb to show you, but it seriously was like that.
I've got an interesting story that kind of it moves the goalposts a little bit. I went with a team of people out to Egypt in 2004. We went to the Temple of Luxor, and there was a room at the back there where some of these folks wanted to sort of get together and join hands and do the spiritual thing. And what they wanted to do is they said, "Oh, let's have a go. Let's see if we can attract some orbs." So they actually gave a couple of cameras, 2 different cameras, different configuration digital cameras, to the guide that was with us. Now, this guide, this chap follows a completely different path. He doesn't know us. He's from Egypt. And the circle joined hands. We all got round, and what we said to this guy was, "Look, take a photo, and then take another photo, and then take another photo, and we'll see if we can draw these things in." And sure enough, the sequence, it's going one camera, then it's going another camera, then back, and then back. You can see these things coming down. They come down like a rain of dots. They're not there in the first shot, but then they gradually start to descend. And then the size of the orb is proportionate to the person who is leading or involved in the ritual. So like the guy that was leading it's got this massive orb sat over the top of him. The guy who's like the second has got the second biggest one, and the third has got the third biggest one. And we didn't know this, of course, until we got back home. We start downloading them, looking at them on bigger screen, this, that, and the other. And sure enough, there seems to be some form of consciousness in these orbs. And back in 2004, you're in the early days, it's the early days of people noticing that these things exist. And it was almost like, we join a circle, we'll call them down. And they came down, and they're all sat at a certain level, a certain height. All the orbs are above the height of the people, but not below. There's none of them lower than shoulder height. And they're sat literally where they were requested to sit. So it kind of feeds into that. But the two things there is, of course, first of all, the human beings were consciously involved in connecting with these things. So that kind of proves a connection. And the second thing is, these things were quite willing to appear on 2 completely different cameras. And the shots are the same on both. You can see them clearly on both cameras. So there's something going on there. There is.
Just, I think sometimes you can take photographs. I've took photographs of objects. But there has been on other occasions that they won't even show themselves until we put the camera away, and that happened when we were in Palm Springs up in the mountain desert there, wasn't it, Barry? We knew that we were at the right location because we satellite tracked the phenomena geologically, so we knew that it was an area where phenomena could manifest. And it was only when we put the camera away, and actually Barry said, "Well, put the cameras away, Steve, because we're not getting anything." And we put the camera. As soon as we literally shut the trunk or the boot, these things. Or actually, Barry said to me, "They're here." And I turned around and I was like, "What? Where? What's going on?" And literally about 3 seconds later, bang! I mean, he even knew that they were there just prior to 3 seconds before even turning on in the sky. But it was, it certainly had a light communication with us. But what concerns me is the fact that you talk about these circles. I mean, the manifestation process of conjuring this phenomenon. I mean, I think the phenomena can be conjured through the practice of these circles, be the same for maybe C5 initiative, be the same as mediums around the spiritual table, a seance, the light phenomena that's been photographed and captured. I've got some of those photographs from the skull of those balls of light, which then they proved to be, they demonstrated on purpose out the metaphysical, because they'd come down onto the table and they'd bounce like this. Boom, 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 right? And then the next ones would go boom, boom, and then through the table, and then up through the table, and then boom, boom, boom. And they were just saying they were demonstrating the metaphysicality of this. And even to the point where, on a couple of occasions, the whole sitters were relocated to the other side of the room, including the chairs, including the table that I was sat with, and none of them had a clue. And when they were asked, how did that happen? What did you do? Some form of communication came back and said, well, we kind of make a blueprint in our reality, sort of a thing. And when we construct this, it affects your reality. So therefore, and it was pretty weird about that could be it could be all BS that. I mean, what they're telling us at the end of the day, we don't know. But the fact is though, people did have those experiences, but they like to demonstrate the metaphysicality of what they can do, including the manifestation of small dinner-sized plate UFOs firing beams of light down on the tables. I mean, it's just crazy, But when the first aspects of entities or non-human beings seen wasn't really an association to UFOs. It was around the sales tables, of age old, wasn't it? Really?
Okay. When you say the phenomena are including things, are you including things like Skinwalker Ranch and the various goings on there? Over anybody, Nathaniel, Philip.
Well, I mean, what's interesting is that are we dealing with something that people term as UFOs or now UAPs? That when they come, seem to alternate the environment, that unsettles other dimensions of reality, that brings these other forces in. It's interesting going back to the orbs because mediums see them. I have seen them, small, very bright, without cameras, but with direct vision, not in peripheral vision. They come in blues, golds, silver, white. They're very small. Now, UFOs come on a larger light source, just going back to that question, and they seem to override or overpower the individual. I'm not going into that now, not here, but it's interesting how this light source, this light phenomena is very much key within most of this, the experiences people have. And Skinwalker Ranch, well, again, the big question is are we dealing with one phenomena or multiple levels of the phenomena? And it's interesting when a UFO is seen, it's giving Skinwalker Ranch, Paul, your amazing work, all of your amazing work, but up in Bempton and with the area. My question in terms of my own research is that what is it about this geographical location that promotes all these levels of high strangeness? And that's very interesting. I mean, I'm not going to answer that here, but I think and feel that it's interesting how the UFOs and even psychic phenomena promotes UFOs. Steve has just said himself, the phenomena is able to morph itself into tiny, as we discussed before, toy-like, almost, unsettling, promotes this unsettlement of childlike quality to it. It's very disturbing.
I'd just like to add, the gentleman, whoever asked this, the phenomena, including Skinwalker, yes, I believe that interaction excites it. I don't think it's always geography or location is key. I think it's intent, thought.
Yeah.
Skinwalker is a good example of things crossing a number of boundaries because they actually had the Native American version of a wolfman appear out of what appeared to be a portal and then disappear back through it again. And this is in an area, like you say, there's predominantly UFOs, and strange, otherworldly dimensions, and earth shakes and, big iron things buried under the ground. But you've still got this crossover with other things.
Yeah, I do think in some cases a strong geological connection to this. I mean, let's go before times of cameras and radars and all sorts of things like that. It was all about land. It was about land-based phenomena, and I think that sometimes we get pulled to the skies in regarding this, and we're looking up there and we're seeing this, but we tend to forget, well, what's it over? What is going on geologically? Because you could say, well, is it this pocket of sky? Or is it the geological pocket, what we're looking at here? And it seems that could be the more of a geological connection to the UFOs than the aerial phenomena. I think I like the term the UAPs suddenly derived from out of the meteorological connection and into the ufology. Well, Barry spent some time up at Skinwalker Ranch up there a few years ago, didn't you, Barry? And he actually came away with video footage and some photographs.
Yeah. There was, the things about Skinwalker that we have to remember is that Skinwalker, of course, now has become infamous, but there's a lot of misinformation in regards to Skinwalker, which has been accepted as mainstream and as what really happened. There's a lot of contention about that now, and it's now starting to fall apart. And we also see as well that the likes of the reports of sickness within the valley was being pinpointed toward the ranch. That is not the case. It's the geography of the land itself is capturing the emissions from oil refineries and everything else is not allowing it to escape in the cold. So that is, of course, having an effect on the people that live there. So there's a lot, again, there's a lot of misinformation in regards to the ranch. But there was also this within the vicinity around Skinwalker. You have, again, back to the magnetic anomalies. You have this huge anomaly that lies underneath Skinwalker, which stretches 80 miles. So it's more than the ranch. It's much more than the ranch, and we do find it's not only ufology, it's cryptids, and there are multiple things that is going on there. But it's interesting when we look at the likes of or understand a lot of our own Celtic lore, and this drive of having these giant serpents, if you like, that are connected to the gold deposits, the natural wealth within the planet, and of course, from the Celtic period, these dragons, they changed, became known as dragons, what we know today and perceive today. But from the show's perspective, I always it made me smile when we consider that the seemingly successful show that's running on Skinwalker, that the guy who they give to guard Skinwalker Ranch, the guy who's got all the guns, they called him Dragon. And when you look at the entire area of Skinwalker, all around it, it is a natural reservoir for gold, silver, plutonium, all of that. There is a natural wealth underneath there. Now, when you've got scientists who are devising equipment which is looking for heavy metals deep underground, then we have to start looking at a different area, possibly.
Okay, we've got literally 10 minutes left, and we've probably got a time for a couple of questions, but I want to put Steve on the spot and just tell us about the awakening. I know Les has touched on it earlier, but it's great we're all together, and just tell us what people can expect, Steve.
Absolutely. I mean, February the 17th, 2024, next year, we are having a new location, actually. It's the Albert Halls in Bolton, in Greater Manchester, UK. Very prestigious location. Beautiful theatre, and we have oh yes, this is the image, kind regards of Chris Turner, but there is this for the first time we wanted to create a theme around our event. So we are looking at the dark side of ufology, and when we say the dark side, there's all sorts of different aspects, because we between all ourselves, we've all come at maybe different angles here, but we're all kind of meeting on the same plateau here. We're all kind of edging towards the same conclusions. But I think it's the journey of how we got there and what our findings were, which is what we can share to people, and that's what's something quite unique. Apart from the fact is, that everybody's actually going to be really trying to target some answers within this very defined area of the subject. But it's necessary. I think it's very timely. I think a lot of people are realizing now there's a much more to this phenomenon than meets the eye. So we are bringing together ourselves for a special one-day event, which is going to be taking place. And you can find details out about that if you travel to www.awakeningexpo.com or awakeningexpo.co.uk. All the details are on that website. So we're really looking forward to it, because we're all even learning off each other, because just this little section of what we're delving into here is the scope of that is massive. Yeah. So but the good thing is, though, we're all traveling, aren't we? We're all moving in a direction. No longer are we static anymore. You used to drive me mad. We're moving in a direction. That's what's really important here.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve.
I know I've mentioned it in the private chat, and Barry's already read it. We can extend the show if any of you guys are up to extending the show, but Barry can't extend the show because he's got other commitments.
Okay, well, let's just get a few questions in, Les, and see where everybody is. I don't know how people are putting time.
Yeah. Let's have a look then. So look where we're up to. Yeah, I mean, I'm on to my next question, which came in at 7:13. So that's how far I am back.
Well, you'll get into trouble for it.
Yeah, we'll bring the next one on. That'll be there. I'll get into trouble as always. Paul Askoff, welcome to the show, Paul, if you're still around. And thanks for staying with us if you are. Would the panel agree that thoughts are energy and they pick up and understand our intentions? I know we've discussed a lot of this tonight already.
I think whatever it is that's interacting, we probably everybody knows our answer. Mine anyway. I think that it's all seeing and all knowing. It does seem to perceive everything. And that's frightening, isn't it? When you consider the fact that if these things, once again, the full spectrum of phenomena, from the cryptid to the UFO to the alien intervention, can speak into our minds, is it possible that it can place images in our minds? And sometimes we're not actually seeing what we think we are seeing. You know, if it's that clever, which it is, if it can speak to us inside here, and it can actually preempt what we're going to do and what we're going to think, is it that clever that we're actually seeing things that aren't actually there because it's producing this image for us? Any thoughts?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I don't talk about personal experience. I mean, you know, we all trying to, sometimes we divert away from us being experiencers because, you know, it's just part, I don't think it's experiences. I think it's just part of life for certain people that have been targeted by the phenomenon from an early age, and the door's open a little bit and it always interacts and always watching and that sort of thing. But I had 3 incidents when I was 8 and 9 years of age of, I used to talk with a horse, which, now we had a very large laurel bush in the back garden. It must have been about 8 foot tall. Laurel bushes are very thick, rubbery leaves and very dense, so you couldn't really see much inside. You know, but it only extended back about 3.5 foot or something. But it was big and ominous, and this horse's head used to come out. It sounds strange. A white horse, her head came out, and I conversed with it on 3 different occasions. He used to ask me, he was more interested in asking me questions than anything else. But at first scared me to death. Secondly, I was a bit intrigued. Thirdly, I kind of started asking questions, and it only happened 3 times, then it appeared again. But yeah, I mean, there's no way a horse can even fit in that laurel bush. I mean, you know, it's just ridiculous. When I look back and I go, what the hell, you know?
Right.
It was no horse, absolutely. But I remember it so vividly that, yes, I remember running in. Every time I went, they rushed in to tell me more, Dad, it just vanished, it'd go, you know. And I think only on one occasion, actually, my mum came out, only on one occasion, because I think she was just intrigued as to what the fuss was. The other 2 times I rushed in and said, he just never ignored me, like, you know, so. But yeah, absolutely. I think your perceptions are definitely being altered. There's no way a horse could even have fitted in that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that, Steve. Honestly.
Yes, thank you, Steve.
And any views, Mark, Nathaniel, Philip?
Yeah, I think it's fairly safe to say, as I said earlier on, that what we're dealing with here is something that is both physical and spiritual. And at the same time, that's us. We're physical and we're spiritual. So the way we're getting influenced and what we're seeing and what's coming through, and sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not there, sometimes others can see it, sometimes it's only us. You know, when you look at the whole panoply of different ways of things and shapes of things, and, you know, is it something that we recognize? Is it something we don't recognize? Like, you know, a horse is quite familiar, but a ball of light isn't. You know, that's quite alien to us. But all of it falls into either it's physical or it's spiritual. You're dealing with those 2 areas, and those areas stretch back thousands of years over history. You know, clearly everything falls into one of those categories, you know, or both, you know, and that's, I think that's the foundation. That's where we're coming from. And then everything else kind of stems from that.
And then it targets you. It targets you, which is awful, because it isolates you, and it knows that no one's going to believe you.
Exactly.
And this is how it does it. It's so clever. And it starts off like, as I said before, I use this toy-like quality to it, this plastic toy-like quality. And as it evolves, it becomes more complex. It is totally frightening. But tell you what, digging and digging is what it's about. And I'll confront the damn thing. I've just got to find my zip somewhere and pull this off. I'm only joking. I've got a sense of humor.
Yeah, I think we call it gaslighting now, don't we?
Yeah, that's right.
I wanted to see Steve's face if I really did that.
let's go on, Steve. Go on.
I was just going to say, I think he's absolutely right here, you know, Philip, when he says that. I mean, I do think also that first interactions, or those initiating actions that we have, they measure us. You know, I mean, it was no coincidence that was a horse that I saw, because, you know, when I was at that age, I was doing horse riding. I loved horses.
Yeah.
I used to go on a Oaks riding school every week. The horse I rode was white, funny enough, which was fun to know.
Gave you something familiar.
So, you know, I'm looking at utilising the measure us first and see what can fit.
Yeah.
to accept, you know.
Yeah. Question here from Pat, and thanks for the question, Pat. And it's aimed at Nathaniel, by the looks of things. You said you don't believe in demons. Brackets. I agree. Could you explain how you came to this conclusion, please?
I don't know. Well, it wasn't my intention. I didn't go into my research with that conclusion already pre-made. I think it's one of the many incarnations of whatever intelligence we're researching. I came across a book by R.E.L. Masters. It's called Eros and Evil, and he gets into witch era literature and the sexual pathologies of whatever this intelligence is. And in multiple cases, I mean, I'm talking hundreds of cases, the phenomenon was quite literally playing into the assumptions and belief systems of the witch and witches themselves. And so they would actually be plucked out of their bed at nighttime, carried up to a mountaintop in some kind of gloomy sabbat. And then the phenomenon would go into this entire theatrical production, literally pandering to the current model of reality these experiencers had. And there were about 5 or 6 different cases where these people really believed they were copulating with demons and corpses. Up until somehow, I don't know if it was a technology or what happened, but something fuzzed in and out. And for a fleeting moment, they're looking around thinking, okay, these are demons and corpses. And they're realizing that it's none of the above, that current model was just another manifestation and manipulation employed by the phenomenon. They were actually being poked and prodded by metallic objects. And so this is an incarnation. And in my research, and even some of the people I've encountered here in the States, what we've done is that it's not that we've also compartmentalized the phenomenon, but we have allowed the phenomenon to play that role to the point of our own deception, where we are now self-deceived and we are not asking the correct questions. But I mean, that question's loaded. What kind of demons? Catholic demons? Right? You notice how they're all Catholic, though?
Yeah, I'm going to say some of the experience I've had in the past with churchianity is that they do tend to have a very specific playbook when it comes to what they're dealing with. But as soon as you actually do dive in and you start getting involved with looking into researching demonology, exorcism, etc., immediately you're outside of that playbook. It's not that, whatever it is, that's not what it is. As you say, that's just a manifestation. It's just that's the chosen role they're playing at that time.
Yeah, it's like another mask in many occasions. Yeah. But you know what? Myself and Barry at work, we are involved with some people which are physiologically occupied. Yeah. And in these cases, we can address it. I say it as opposed to the person who's quite happy with occupation, who thinks it's rewarding in some way. I don't think he will be. But, I've felt the power of these things. I mean, there's been occasions when it's demonstrated, and then I was taken down to the ground. Literally, my legs were taken from me. I was on the floor. I was a wreck, and I couldn't do what my functions couldn't work properly. It's just the power of these things can be very unprecedented. But in regards to demons, I think it could be just another mask. I don't think we ever really seen the source. I think the mask represents all these different things.
Yeah, even within Christianity and people that study that in great detail, there's no idea. No one's come up with an idea as to where these things are coming from. There's theories, and people are, saying, well, they come from this place and that place, and maybe they're fallen angels, maybe they were trapped in the planet, at the beginning somehow, and but at the end of the day, there's no answer. There is no answer to where these things are coming from. No. So again, it's part of that darker side of what's going on. It really is.
I mean, this thing was initially said, this is my name, this is where I died. I was a person. I had 2 children. I died on a train crash. I actually buried in Birmingham. Every single thing was a lie. When we do research, everything was a lie. It's not the first time I've come across this. People saying they got spirit guides, and they say, "Oh, what do you know about them?" You tell me. I'll do the research. They don't exist. Never were.
Back to what I was saying about Ouija boards. Again, it comes through, but whatever comes through clearly knows about that information and can falsify it.
Right.
You know,
Absolutely.
so it's gathering its information from huge.
The biggest problem is thinking that they have limitations. There's
Yeah,
no
they don't.
limitations. We're the puppets on the string. When we can conduct the experiments and get to the point of ask questions, they delivered the 10 answers.
Closes down.
Phenomena, DVP, bang, 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 bang. There's all your answers. We never even asked them the questions yet. So they're obtaining it from us. So the thing is that when we go for sittings and we want to find out about Great Uncle Albert, and the medium sat there and the psychic, and she's picking these things up, I truly do think that she is picking these things up, but the information relayed to her, it's being passed to me, is obtained from me. So there's a vicious circle that's going round and round and round here. Yeah. That's the problem of this. We put limitations on these, and I don't think they have it.
We experimented with the Ouija board, just briefly, I'll just state this. And me and Philip, we don't have any, like yourselves, any nonsense. And we were communicating with it. It was interesting. It wouldn't answer any questions about Roswell. It's very good, I agree with you, Steve, at fancifying or elaborating on all manner of things. But it wouldn't respond to Roswell, and it wouldn't respond to the assassination of John F. Kennedy. There are certain things, you're absolutely right, we experimented long before we were involved in this. Asked them these questions. We even wrote them down in books. Yes. All these questions we asked it, and it could go on and on about these fanciful notions, but when you want pure facts, it plays dead.
Yeah. Did it draw you in, Philip, Ron?
Yes.
Did it start almost amoeba-ish, almost subtle, that you gave you a little bit of a thrill, a little bit of excitement?
Yes, I will agree with that. It did. Yeah. It was like a kind of power or magic, but then the cracks began to show. With these things, as you gentlemen yourself know, that as you dig further and further and you give it time and patience and thought, you begin to see the cracks.
We thought we had an Aladdin's lamp, but unfortunately...
we called it bluff. We rumbled its game, didn't we?
we got to the point of doing these experiments because we were so excited. It took a long time, but we reached a level of this very strong conduit, and it took a long time. We didn't want to lose it, so we were able to ask questions. And don't get me wrong, we asked some interesting questions about dimensions, and they were saying, there's 11 dimensions. Is there multiple universes? Is there multiple us? Yes, there is. We got all these. We don't know how true they are, of course. What about heaven? What about hell? What's the meaning of life? And all those sort of things. We got delivered information. We don't know how true it is, but sometimes what we didn't realise was we were bringing it home with us. Jack had been playing hell because we had a terrible weekend after doing some of these experiments. We got things banging at the window, banging at the door. Wow. Do you know what? I've got CCTV cameras pointing outside at my front door, right? Bang, 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 bang. Really loud. I'm upstairs. I can look out my window and look down at the actual door. I can't see anybody. But my CCTV cameras, what it did is it took out just a few minutes gap out of the recording, cut out of when the incident took place. The thing is, you can't do it on my recording. On the recording, you have to design to delete the first one before you get to the second. It cut it out like that. And this is how easy you can manipulate these things.
100%. 100%.
It is the hitchhiker effect. It gets on your skin. For myself and Barry now, we have to respite. We have to say, God, we really want to do it, but let's just take a respite because it does come.
Briefly, because I know that we're short of time, but CCTV, I've got it in this property, and something happened here, and I thought, I've got you. You know, we saw, and it weren't on the CCTV. There's a gap where this should have been, and it's so difficult in it to you've just relayed it, and it's a brave thing to relay because I know there's people going to be sat there thinking, oh yeah, but I've experienced it. Really have.
Yes.
Anybody before we move on or close down?
We can move on a little bit.
Okay. You guys okay still for 5 minutes?
Are you all right, you guys?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I've got a few more questions. I'll get my ass tanned if I don't ask some of these questions. So apologies for anybody tonight who doesn't get the question asked, but I'm going to try my best. 1423, as you can probably read, Steve. Just wanted to say thanks to Steve for putting on this early awakening minicon. Really appreciate it, Steve. Looking forward to catching up with you guys.
Brilliant.
That's Steve.
Thank you.
Yeah. And okay. Yeah. Jerry Denning. If you're still with us, Jerry, you was in at 26 minutes past 7. Whether you're still awake, I don't know.
I know the question. He asked me this question last night. So I'm not going to answer it. Let these guys have a go.
Okay, so the question is, we won't be able to understand the phenomena of deception unless we understand why it needs to deceive. What does it get out of it?
Yeah.
I wonder if it's something to do with its own existence. We kind of touched on this at the beginning, didn't we? When we were saying,
yes,
you know, is it there because it needs us? You know, is it something about us? That feels like it could be a good explanation. Clearly, it's like, you know, the tree falling in the woods. If there's no one there to see it, has it actually fallen? So if we're not here to perceive this and experience this and see it, and does that mean it ceases to exist? You know,
Right. That's interesting you saying that, Mark, because I know a recent document from a quantum physicist, a professor in quantum physics, and he actually put it to me in a kind of layman term that what we know to exist in our reality doesn't exist until we observe it. I know what you're saying. So imagine your kitchen downstairs, Paul. Your kitchen downstairs doesn't exist until you go and experience it.
Yeah, good point.
This is what his argument is in quantum physics, and if that is the case, then what a crazy reality we really are living in.
Yeah, it's frightening.
yes,
and
and
what we
I think, yeah,
I'm saying what we see and what we perceive exists in a sense to serve us.
yeah.
Is that the same thing that's true of this phenomena?
They want something from us because in the cases of abduction, just very quickly, they are wanting something from the individual that goes beyond the level of, you know, our understanding of our biology. And I think it goes even into the source of what we really represent on a deeper level of consciousness.
It's known that for a long time,
and it's obviously trying to replicate to some degree this of what it was. So it obviously
Self-replication.
That's correct. That's exactly right.
Yeah, it's hard to actually find out what the actual why certain individuals are having these. I initially thought maybe it's something to do with rhesus negative blood because I'm a rhesus negative, and a lot of people are who have experiencing, but then not all people are. And I thought, okay, all right, what the hell is it then? Well, maybe it's just, I don't know, maybe it's just that, we aren't any different than anybody else. What happens, what makes us this way is because of our experiences. That early first experiences is opened our consciousness to allow these actions to happen, and they share part and parcel of that. Maybe we're just like everybody else, except for the fact that we are initiated into this whatever this is.
Yeah. The difference is the difference. That's basically it.
Is it almost the seeing is believing, and and it's not a belief because once you've seen, there's no denying. Even if none of us here today can prove what we're talking about, we actually know there's the knowing, because I can't prove what happened to me in childhood any more than I suppose anyone else can. But it's put me on that path, and I know now. And does that openness, the knowing, allow this? We keep calling it the phenomena. What else can it be? Allow it to interact more with me? I don't know. Is it putting us all on this path that we're on? I think possibly it does.
Yeah.
Okay, so Steve, if you can read the question at all. The disabled Welshman, any chance of the Awakening Conference ever being held in South Wales anytime soon?
Do you know what? Sometimes it's what was that famous phrase? It's better to take the mountains to somebody than it is the other way around. I mean, the problem is that the logistics of moving such a large an event to other locations, we would love to. We absolutely would. Probably one of the biggest problems that we always initiated with is the fact is there an actual location that can house us, and are they available, and are they accessible, and do they have the facilities what's required? Do they have the parking? Do they have the places to transport? Do they have food and drink and all the massive big tick list? Airports, where's the hotels, where's the airports for guests? And there's just so much logistics. I would love to do this. I mean, we know that we have been in Blackpool and we have been at Bowlers, and now we're going to Albert Halls. We have moved it around. The biggest thing for us to do that is because of this huge tick list that's involved in planning, and that, because we take 12 months, it takes a full year to plan our big events, and it literally does take that long. So we're like looking forward about now. I mean, 2025, we've actually got plans for 2025. We're actually looking at where should we go and what should we do in 2026. It's crazy, but that's how far forward we are. If we ever have those opportunities, I always say to people, look, if you think that we would be good in that area, and that there would be enough interest in those locations. You guys know those locations better than I do. Do you know locations where that could be housed? You know, you feed back to me, because I can't go all around the world looking at different locations, finding out logistically would they fit, would it work. If you can send information to me, then we will always consider it. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Brilliant. And I don't know how long we want to go. Do you want to go another 5 minutes on the stream, guys? Can you do that?
If every good, let's do 5 minutes and close it down. Yeah.
Okay. Right then.
Nathaniel, go on.
Oh no, if I can do 5 minutes, that's fine.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, so I've got one from Dogman TP Hunting. Could the phenomena be biocentric? What are your thoughts there? Biocentric, and as meaning life as having intrinsic value. You probably know. I didn't know. I had to look it up, but there we go.
I was going to say, my first response to that is it implies that the life, whatever it is, or this thing, is self-contained, which means it focuses on whatever person or phenomena or whatever, but that doesn't hold true for everything, because you can have things happening where a large number of people in some cases see the same thing. So clearly then it has a totally independent existence. It actually is there, which then that takes the thought element of it out. You can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all of the people all of the time.
But you say that, Mark.
My instinctive reaction to that.
You say that, and you've kind of broke it down better than I could have. But you say that, and you'll get a multi-witness sighting, but they can't agree on what they've seen. That's a known phenomenon. If you ask anybody in the police force or anybody like that goes asking witnesses, But you're correct, absolutely correct. Not everybody sees everything, because we see it in our own terms. But that doesn't rule out the fact that something has actually happened. Yeah. So I see the detachment as ruling out the fact that it's some kind of biological entity doing some kind of mass hypnosis. And again, if that was true, I mean, the reverse of what you've just said is, if it was biocentric thought, ask the question, why doesn't everybody see the same thing? Reverse it. So
it's very true that a lot of people don't. People experience separate things.
No, they don't see the same thing.
Some people experience separate things when they're actually even together, believe it or not. The biggest problem is that when we're trying to figure out what is responsible, how could it be? We have to first just look at what it can consist of. I mean, it becomes extraterrestrial, it's interdimensional, it's extra-dimensional, it's demonological, it's angelic, it's all the above it can be. It can fashion itself to what it wants, I think, like this, and fit like a glove. Yeah. And if I found this by traveling the world and going to different areas, and I find this is really odd. The phenomena acts differently in these locations, because I'm in the Bible Belt area.
Cultural,
and it fashions itself to them, and it does things that it doesn't do anywhere else, and that is really strange. It's intelligent, just like Nathan said, it evolves, and it knows how to fit into certain cultural societies and their beliefs. And I've seen that as I've passed through them, because when I'm delivering a lecture, I'm delivering it across the country, and my lecture's not changing, but the people and the aspects of the theories are probably absolutely loving it and thinking this is the best thing since sliced bread. And then to crying, and we don't want you to come here anymore.
and these different factions are probably all perceiving what you're saying differently to another location.
Exactly.
Nathaniel, Philip, before we close this down, any views?
Well, I think the phenomena seems to also target researchers, especially those helping abductees and so on and so forth. That will be something else we'll be talking about later.
I just agree that it is multifaceted. We haven't seen its true face. I mentioned that in the new book I've just finished. It's being published, Illusions. So, I believe with you guys, that's what it is. Nathaniel,
last word, Nathaniel.
Well, my last word. Well, I think I've had an amazing time. First of all, I'm thrilled to death, ecstatic, even that we're all going to be together come February. I think that if anything, we're going to be pushing this subject to the masses in a way that they've never even heard of it this way. You know, a lot of people have never even heard of these case studies, or they may have been conditioned. You know, I mean, I've met people like that. I didn't even know that existed. It does. So if anything, I believe that we're going to bring much needed insight to people and hopefully push this narrative and move the goalposts a little bit, move that needle to where people are like, well, you know what? I think that does make sense. But you know what? The phenomenon is evolving according to our awareness of it. It does fit into certain roles, whether or not we give them that role, or whether or not they have shaped entire religions in order to manipulate. It's all on the table, guys. It's all on the table. But I'm the least of my brethren here tonight, and I'm ecstatic to join all of you. I look forward to my flight to the UK. I'm super excited.
Yeah, it's going to be
On that
very.
note, thank you, guys. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you for giving us your time.
I'm just going to leave this on the screen from Chris Turner Films. We ain't going to discuss it. We did discuss it earlier on, but interesting itself. What if the phenomena itself is AI? I know we went into some depth in this earlier, but we'll just leave that on there. And that's a great thought, Chris. And that's kind of where my thinking was coming from when I posed the original question. So, yeah. On that note, then, thanks for all the questions, and thanks everybody for staying with us in the chat. I think at the biggest count here we had about 817 people in. So thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks for all the support, and I got to mention all the monetary support from Martin Abbas, T.A. Karen Bierman, and Rivington Pike Beast. Thank you, and all have a good Christmas. So that's good night from me, Les, the producer of Truth Proof Live Stream.
Thank you very much, guys.
All the contributors on tonight's show. We wish you all the best, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Have a great Christmas, and I'll see you soon.
You will. God bless you.
Bye-bye.
God bless you. God bless you all. Thank you.
God bless you.